Okay, so welcome. This session is really specifically designed for universities to help you better understand the purpose and the background of the regional forums, why they exist, but also how you as institutions can not just get involved, but make a significant impact on schools and actually structure potentially all of your high school engagement and outreach internationally around the regional forums. So that's really the purpose of the session. Just by a show of hands, how many of you have attended a regional forum or multiple regional forums in the past? Okay, yeah, well, okay, so one of us. So we'll get into all of that. All right, and that's really helpful for me to know. So the question was, can you explain a little bit about what regional forums are? We'll get into all of those things here and welcome everyone. Which regional forum did you attend? Can I ask? And I'm going to give you the mic because our friends virtually can't hear you otherwise.
Yeah.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. Yeah.
You could introduce yourself and say which institution you're from.
Yep. I'm Jennifer Russell from Bryn Mawr College, Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yay. And it was a while ago. It was in Bangalore.
A while ago, as in years?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe 18 or 19.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So a lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, welcome, Jennifer.
Bangalore. Thank you.
Great to see another Philadelphian here. All right. So really the idea here is for us to actually shift the way universities think about outreach and recruitment. That's really one of the purposes of the regional forums. And I'll just mention again, I know we have some of our colleagues also coming in. This session is designed for university delegates. So for our high school delegates in the room, there may be a session that's better suited. You're very welcomed to stay. But this session, it may have been mislabeled. I don't know. But in any case, I want you to be able to use the time very wisely. I won't be offended if you want to go to a different session. Okay, so shifting the way we actually think about recruitment and engagement. And I'll also just share that I come from about 16 years in university admissions, overseeing international student services units at 2 institutions in the Philadelphia area. Drexel University, I was there for about 8 years. And Chestnut Hill College, I was also there for about 8 years, a very small private liberal arts college in the Philadelphia area. I began serving as a volunteer in the IC3 community in 2016 through 2019. And then I, sort of accidentally joined the team then. And I've been part of the team for about 4 years now. So that's a little bit about, my backstory, which is relevant. I wanted to share, especially because I do come from an admissions outreach recruitment background. I understand the pressures that you feel. I will say, I'm almost a little bit relieved that I'm not in your position now. I do think that there's so much that you're navigating as, as university enrollment management professionals and all of that. So we hope, this session will also give you, empower you a little bit to perhaps think a bit differently about how you're engaging with schools. And, the philosophy of IC3, of course, mostly the beneficiaries of our work are high schools. But in doing that, you as university leaders are critical in that effort. And a big part of the work that IC3 is doing is really to help you better understand, and not better understand, you understand very well, but to also just to, as we say, shift the thinking around recruitment from a transactional sort of mindset to a relational mindset, to one of capacity building within schools. And one prime example of why this matters is, I don't know how many of you stopped into the graduation last night, or you saw some of the graduates in their caps and gowns. There were 386, if I'm not incorrect, graduates from the flagship 1-year certificate training program. And that's 386 graduates. Many of them are coming from schools where there was zero counseling effort before they entered that program. So what does that mean for you? That means that you have someone to pick up the phone call that you make, that you have someone who, we hope will respond to your emails, I can't tell you how many years I spent sending emails into the void. I would see, well, where are these? We have applications coming from XYZ school. Why? How? I'm going to that country. I would love to visit them, reaching out to the school, reaching out to the school, reaching out to the school. No one there to receive you. No one there to understand the concept of counseling. So through the regional forums, firstly, the regional forums as a, as a pillar within kind of the action-oriented steps that we take as IC3 to advance the mission of counseling in every school, the regional forums are really critical. This conference is great. We love the conference. IC3 is not a conference. This is a means to an end. We're here as this is a means to an end so that we can empower schools. We can bring you together with them. You can help them build capacity. The first conference back in 2016 in Mumbai, there were about 285 delegates. Obviously, the conference has grown significantly, even though with the hybrid conference, we're able to create a lot more access to this kind of training. But there are still most of the schools in the world that will never be able to get to this conference. So the regional forums are a way that we can actually bring this mission to them and to regions. And the regional forums are 1 to 2 day events, mini conferences, if you will, that bring schools and universities and some approved educational organizations together around professional development, around networking, around building capacity in schools. This year, and I'll get into, well, I'll hold on to that because I'll get into the numbers a little bit more later. It's really a part of the access pillar for IC3. We want to have these, that's why I traveled to Kampala in March for the first ever regional forum in Uganda. We had about 180 counselors and teachers and university delegates there. It was one of the largest. I was shocked. There's such a need for this, and the concept of counseling in many parts of the world, in most parts of the world, is actually not even existing. So this is actually helping to build the concept of counseling so that we have, 100,000 graduates in caps and gowns at some point, and counseling efforts established in these schools. So it's really a creating access effort. The regional forums are really built so that you can, as universities, connect meaningfully with them. There are opportunities, and we'll get into this, to interact with students and do all of that, during that time. IC3, our mission is really to serve schools, to train the trainer, not to organize fairs and do all of that. I think many of you probably visited schools, this week. We do that because the host schools want to see you. We do that because you want to see them, but that's not really the core part of what we do. And the host schools really were the ones that were, putting all of those things off. But based on feedback that we've received, we also are taking a little bit more of a proactive approach because we want regional forums to be proactive at the maximum level of productivity for you all as well. Because in truth, you're the ones that are creating access for schools. Regional forums are free for schools. They're completely open at no cost, just like almost everything IC3 does. You as a university, all of the schools, IC3, the team, all of us, we're indebted to the university community because you're subsidizing their participation in their training. So your presence here, yes, you're here to meet, you're here to connect, but you are actually creating access for schools. So we're really grateful, deeply grateful for your presence here. You just registering for this conference allows significant number of schools to be here at either no or a very low cost, at a venue like this. Each year there's a theme. The Content and Research Committee, which is one of the volunteer-based committees, and we have, Mamta is here. I don't see any other IC3 leaders here, but I don't want to put you on the spot, Mamta, but Mamta's serving on the Inclusion, Diversity, and Scholarship Committee, one of the many committees. We would invite universities, and we'll talk about comprehensive engagement with schools. But if you're really resonating with this mission as well, we'd invite you to also get involved. Not only is it a great way to, make an impact and do that, but it's also a great way for you to connect meaningfully with schools in another setting. where you're having that. So this year, finding purpose through counseling is the theme. Shaping the future through counseling will be next year's theme. That'll be announced later officially at the closing. You may have seen some of that in some of the materials and all of that. All of the themes, the contents, the sessions that are here and at the regional forums are reviewed and approved by the IC3 Content and Research Committee, another volunteer-based committee. You can see all of the people that make that up on the website. These are school colleagues, university colleagues. They're setting the themes. They're setting, what do we need to be talking about? What are the really important issues that need to be addressed? It's all done by the IC3 Leadership Committee, which is a volunteer-based effort. All right, so just to give you a sense, now since 2023, or until 2023 now, 2017, the first regional forums happened. I believe there were 9 regional forums there in that year. They're hosted at high schools, right? They're hosted at high schools around the world. Since that time, and including the annual conference host schools, there are now more than 150, when we say host schools, that are actually IC3 serving many thousands of schools around the world. But the host school community is really those that are deeply embedded. They are welcoming you to Hyderabad, for example. They're welcoming you to their homes, essentially to their schools for the regional forum. So that has grown significantly. This year, there were 30 regional forums, 30. It was a huge effort in 11 different countries, first time forums, as you can see there. Well, actually, that'll be the next part. But how did it break down geographically, right? So as you think of well, how many, just by a show of hands, how many of you as university colleagues, assuming that you're here, you do outreach and recruitment and admissions, that's part of your function. How many of you, your primary territory is India, South Asia? Okay, that makes sense. How many of you also oversee other regions? Can some of you shout out what those regions are? Well, actually, you know what? I won't have you do that because we won't hear you on them. But how about Latin America? Anyone cover Latin America, Europe, Africa, Southeast Asia, other parts of Asia? Okay, so that gives a little bit of a sense. But what you can see is that most of the regional forums are, there'll be 20 plus or so in India. Also, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Myanmar this year. And then you can see how they kind of broke down, and we're growing the number of regional forums outside of South Asia every year. So as you think about also, if you don't cover other regions, but you work closely with colleagues who do, this is really important information for them. We want to see universities engaging globally, not just thinking about, okay, what can I do in India? IC3 is also not an India effort. The conference is here. There's a massive, most universities, they want to come to India, right? This is a place that is very important for you for many reasons. But you also have a global effort, right? You also have a global effort. This year, there were first-time forums in many places, and that we keep pushing the boundaries of access through the regional forums. In India, for example, many of those forums were in places that you've maybe never heard of, and certainly most of you probably have never been to. We want universities to, as we say, go back to this and think differently about how you're engaging. Don't just come to Delhi and Mumbai and Chennai. What about an amazing place and amazing schools in Vapi and Bhubaneswar, okay, and Bhopal, and so many other places throughout this country? We hear from university, and I experienced this as well. Oh, okay, you can go to India without going to Delhi, Mumbai, and all of that, but it's saturation is the term I hear a lot. It's so saturated. It's so saturated. It's difficult for me to really have meaningful interactions with schools and students in these places now, because every university is more or less marinating in the same 300 international schools in the world. When we visit, we go to, Oberoi International School, Dhirubhai Ambani International School. We're going to go to, Geneva. We're going to hit all of the schools there. We're going to go to Istanbul. We're going to hit Koç. We're going to hit, all of the. There's a world outside of this group. And that's what we're also trying to sensitize universities to. And there are amazing students, amazing counselors, and new counselors who are ready now to receive you And a lot of that is going to happen through the regional forums. So just to give you a sense, and I'll just kind of scroll through this, you can get a sense of the impact that's being made from a numbers standpoint, how many colleagues are participating. We're seeing many more first-time universities actually, they're kind of catching on a little bit and saying, oh, okay. It's not just about going to yet another fair, purchasing another list, where we are these qualified leads or these unqualified leads? No, we need to build lasting relationships with schools. That has to be a major part of your strategy, and not just your strategy, but we hope your alignment in helping young people find their purpose is happening through the counseling efforts. So you'll see that, and that's why we're seeing a significant growth in attendance and participation in regional forums, not just at the school level. As you see, I mean, high schools are participating significantly in these. This is a chance for you to meet new colleagues, new counselors, new principals, establish relationships. Many are looking for also partnerships, and this could go beyond the admissions function as well. We're seeing that many new universities are coming and participating in regional forums again. We're seeing that play out. A lot of this also, and we'd mentioned that again, pre-COVID, coming and now everything has changed. It's a little bit kind of going back, I guess you would say, to, we're here in person, many of us, a lot of our friends are here with us virtually as well. The modes of interaction are different. Regional forums are purely in person. They're purely in person. That was an intentional decision. It wasn't a logistical decision, although I don't want to think about what it would entail to do a hybrid forum at every, 36 high schools in 16 different countries. But it's really meant to have that richness of in-person interactions. All right. So looking ahead to 2024, what can you actually expect? And then we'll get into, and I have some, we have some recommendations. We want to help you craft how you're actually engaging with schools throughout this. More regional forums in more countries. There'll be something around 36 regional forums next year in 2024. Most of the high schools and the dates are already published. Most of the cities and countries are already published. This information used to come out much later, but now most of it is already published. We acknowledge many of those host schools already. Yesterday at the opening, you would have seen that. You can see the growth in kind of the geographies that are being served through the regional forums as well. You'll see a growth in some of the regions. So, you may regionally say, okay, well, we have a focus in the Middle East. Okay, we want to spend our time. There'll be, one forum in Doha, one forum in Abu Dhabi, one forum in Dubai, and they'll be clustered, right? So you could spend a week meeting all of the counselors in those areas, and actually building your branding around that, building your communication around that, building your marketing around that, building your outreach around that. You could build your entire global outreach campaign for the spring, as I would call it, the spring, starting in January through July. I put my recruitment hat on and say, what are we doing for spring outreach? What are we doing for spring recruitment? At my time at Drexel, we did begin really keying in on regional forums as a anchor point, right? It's an anchor point for us to then go to key regions for us and engage with high schools very meaningfully in that way. And then, of course, we would do whatever we were doing, alumni visits and high school visits. And if we're doing fairs, some of that would also make sense at that time. What can you also expect for next year? We want to keep pushing the boundaries for access and making sure that we're there. You'll see first-time forums in many new places, and schools rely on your expertise. They rely on your knowledge and advising. We have many new counselors coming into the field. We actually, and which I love, we also have many new colleagues coming into the field of recruitment and outreach. And by the way, the IC3 Institute is launching its first ever training program for universities, right? So if you yourselves are coming into the field, this would be more for those that are new, probably in the first 2 or 3 years of their profession. You're building teams, you have new team members. It's 22-hour program. You can chat with the Institute about that and help get the training for them on this idea of what we call the counseling-based approach to student recruitment and admissions. Not a transactional one, but a counseling-based approach, right? What value are we bringing, not just for our institution, but I think we're all educators, right? I think I was a teacher, I was a counselor, and I somehow ended up in admissions, and that's how I approached that, right? If a student didn't end up at my institution, okay, that's great. We often advise them and say, maybe this institution is a better fit for you. This is the kind of, so there are ethical conversations that are happening here as well. Pre-forum activities, and it's a little bullet point for a pretty important topic, a pretty important, subtopic for this discussion. So the regional forums themselves are, they're one-day engagements where it's more or less 8 to 5. Okay, at a particular high school, it's going to be a combination of networking, designed networking. There typically is a student fair in the morning from that high school. You have an opportunity as universities to meet the students of that school in that region. Sometimes they will invite schools from the neighboring communities as well if they have the capacity for that. And then there would also be a counselor fair, right, where they would then come and meet you. And it's in these forums are typically anywhere from 75 to 200 people, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on the city, right? So this is giving you really an opportunity to engage in a pretty personal way with a lot of the counselors there. And that's really the focus, not the students. It's really your engagement with the counselors, but we know you obviously want to meet the students too. So that is built in. And then throughout the day, there are learning sessions. We hope you'd be presenting some of those. We'll talk about the open call for proposals that exists, just like the conference. First time last year that there was an open call for proposals. We didn't receive as many as we'd hoped, but this year I think that will also change. And some content is curated and things like that by the host schools and by IC3 as needed based on the audience that's coming to that. So there are learning sessions that are happening throughout the day, very similar to, it's like a mini IC3, you would say, but it also is starting to have more of the feel of this, the grandness that's actually happening here at the conference itself. So pre-forum activities, what happens the day before a forum, and in some rare cases after the forum? There will be school visits and that's, if you register for the forum as a university delegate, those school visits you'll be invited to those, right? It's not, you have to register separately for those. It'll be a little bit different than how it was organized, this week. IC3 will take a very proactive approach this year and there was a lot of feedback and learning that we had in 2023 around this component in particular. So you will know well in advance the high schools that you'll be visiting. But when you register for a regional forum, or you're planning to register for multiple, or you're doing a bundle or whatever it is you're doing, you say, okay, we're going to do, 5 forums or 10 forums. Some do most of the forums, believe it or not. They split it up between their teams and do that. Block your calendar for sure the day before. And, and in some cases it would be the day after, depending on how the regional forums are clustered. So you'd be visiting schools. There typically is a pre-forum dinner, right? These are sponsored events. So if your institution, you have marketing budgets and all of that, and you want to put some of that into something like a pre-forum dinner where you would have, 25, 50, 100 counselors, depending on the region. And you say, okay, well, Dubai is critical for us. Dhaka is critical for us. Nairobi is critical for us, right? You can host and sponsor a pre-forum dinner, right? That's open for schools. Typically, those pre-forum dinners are not open for all of the universities. The universities that are attending are really the ones that are hosting and sponsoring those. Okay, so just keep that in mind, and there are other ways to do that. So it's not just what's happening on the day of the event, but you can actually build that outreach and engagement around the forum and what's happening before as well. So I want to give you a little bit of this is all on the web. You don't have to, do screenshots and all of those things, but I did want to give you a sense of where the development is now. And you can see it's a pretty rich series of forums that's happening starting in January. The first forum will be on the 9th. As it stands now, here in India, we'll kick that off. And then you'll see, obviously how we cluster forums in the different regions so that you have the chance to not just come and do one, but you'd want to do all of those in that region. If you're coming to Latin America, you want to do all of those in that region. Coming to the Middle East, you want to do all of those in that region, and so on. All right. Africa, Southeast Asia. All right. So you can just take it in and okay. So it's a lot. It's a lot to look at now, but I think I'm showing this to you so that you can, some of you are probably still planning your fall travel, if you will. I get it. I understand how that goes, but I think, especially from a planning standpoint, budgets are sensitive. We want to get this information to you as far in advance as possible so that you can really plan to do that. And we also want to make this, we want to make this pretty effortless for you. I think at the end, in probably my 15th or 16th year, I got to a point where I would dread travel planning. I got to a point of, oh my gosh, I don't know if I have the energy for this anymore. And maybe that's why I'm not in that seat anymore. But I always loved the engagement. I always loved the actual, being there and doing that. But it takes so much effort to plan and hinge. And it's a domino effect, right? Oh, please let them be available at 1 p.m. today. Please let them be available at 1 p.m. today. You don't have to worry about those kinds of things. And we really want to make this effortless for you in that way. So how should you approach the regional forums? You can come and do one forum. You can come and do one forum. That's possible. But the way that these are structured is so that you can actually do this much more intentionally, much more intentionally, and across your entire team. Now, some of you, how many of you, maybe you're the only one at your institution that does anything kind of international outreach related? All right. So there are a few of us there that do that. How many of you have a team where there are multiple people who are doing? Yeah. So that's most of you in here. So with that, when you take this back and you have conversations about, how you're engaging and perhaps you might even be introducing the regional forums, take this to your team. You go to your global meetings and you really do your plannings. That's how we would do this and say, okay, well, I'm going to cover this area. You cover that area. All right, I have a family wedding now. Kevin needs to jump in there and go to India this time, and how all of that breaks down for you. I understand. But what you should do is, whether you're coming to one forum or you're going to do all 36 of those forums, we'll give you a big plaque if you do all 36. Make it really intentional. Engage comprehensively. What I mean by that is, if you can take a really active approach, and I think sometimes we as university colleagues, you get there and you say, okay, this is what's next on my agenda. And then you go there and you kind of go through the motions because you're exhausted. You've been traveling, you've been on the road for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or, what country am I in? What next airport am I seeing? This will also help rejuvenate you, I think, from the human element. And I hope you're feeling that at IC3. I mean, that's very intentional. I hope you got your rose when you came in, you have your love band, it's that we want you to feel that human interaction. This is not a place to come and sell. It's a place for you to come and really, we hope, also reinvigorate and also have those outcomes as a result of those engagements. So some of the ways you can have an active presence as opposed to a passive presence is, firstly, just be there. When I say be present, be present. Interact. Put the phone down if you can do that. We know you have interviews and you have application reading and all of that. Engage in the sessions with them. Be there for, obviously, the networking components, but stay. We have some universities that will say, okay, I'm going to be there for the fair and then I'm going to leave. It doesn't reflect well, but I think there's a lot of missed opportunity that happens. And sometimes, it's just, you have to catch a flight and all of that. That's different. But I think you want to make the most of this. So practically how you can do that is submit proposals. Don't just come and participate. come and share your knowledge. Come and speak, not in a promotional way. These are not, hey, this is my institution. This is how we do admissions. This is why we're so great. It's not that. It's very much learning sessions. It's very much, knowledge sharing, collegial. We're sharing all of the experience that we have with each other. October 15th will be the date when the call for proposals opens. It will probably be open until about December 1st. That's how it was last year. The committee we'll have to get them to confirm that. It'll all be on the web. But think about that 6-week period as the open call for proposals. You would not be submitting blanket proposals to multiple cities, right? So if you're attending 20 regional forums or 10 regional forums, you're not saying, okay, well, I'm gonna put this session proposal in, and wherever I get accepted is where I'm gonna go. The committee has it structured very differently. Think about each of these as its own IC3, right? If you're going to NAFSA, you're going to IC3, you're going to International ACAC, you're going to IE, wherever you're going, you're going to think about what is relevant for that region, what is relevant for that, what is the theme of that conference, just in the same way you would submit proposals. And for universities, what I recommend is, you think about the high schools potentially that you're connected with in those areas. You build a panel. Maybe you put together colleagues who are from universities that you can put together a contingent of colleagues who would come and let's do a university panel. Counselors love to hear global perspectives. Okay, we have a university maybe from the UK, maybe there's one from the US, or maybe it's different regions in a particular country that you're presenting. But make it be proactive in that, submitting those proposals. Now, obviously submitting a proposal doesn't guarantee that it will be accepted, but I'll tell you that if you submitted a solid proposal this year, it probably got accepted. The committee will review all of those pieces. Obviously, promotional sessions, they won't be considered, all of those kinds of things. So that's really important. Submit those session proposals. They won't extend beyond the deadline. They're very strict about the deadline. The committee is. In some cases later on, if needed, they may reach out to you and say, hey, can you sit on a panel for X, Y, and Z? But that's something that you don't want to leave to chance. All right, so be very, very intentional there. If you have a team, think about how you're deploying them. All right, think about where they're going. How can you cover more ground? How can you do more outreach and say, okay, this is a particular region for us that's really important. Let's go. And again, we anchor our outreach around a regional forum, and we can do all of those other things, whatever the priorities are, initiatives for your institution that you can do. And then, as I'd shared, you can also you can deepen the engagement by, okay, maybe I want to host a dinner, right? Instead of doing that on your own, do it officially through, where you're then officially inviting all of the high schools that are already registered for that. We get a lot of requests from universities about data. Hey, do you sell data? Can we get a list? That IC3 does not do that. It will never happen. That's not, our pathway. But what we want you to do is, through some of these engagements, if you are hosting a dinner, obviously, we will be sending official invitations to those that are registered. You'd manage the RSVP list. IC3 will make the arrangements for you. All of those pieces are there. And you can do that in one-off cities, right? You can host or sponsor a dinner in one-off cities. And you can also talk, if you haven't met Priyanka and Shelly on the partnerships team, and Hetal is also here, have a chance to speak with them at the IC3 Pavilion. There's something this year that hasn't happened, and that is something that's called a school empowerment partners. Those are institutions that they want to align with a particular region. So let's say you want to host dinners in, across all of the forums in, maybe Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, right? Or in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, Singapore, and in Indonesia, right? Where you would have branding across all of these events. You would have a focal point across all of these events. You'd have that meaningful interaction across all of those areas. In Latin America, for example, we've been doing simultaneous translation, And it was pretty amazing, right? And this was also one of the ways where, and even at some of the bilingual schools where the students are well prepared, their English level is at a point where, would be appropriate for your institutions, but the counselors may not have that. So we've created an environment where the counselors, we want that, and this is also to the access, right? We want these to be accessible for everyone, not just those English medium schools, bilingual schools. We want to push the access. So we've been doing simultaneous translation where there's a session or a plenary. It's happening both in Spanish and English. We'll do that in Brazil and in Portuguese and English. We did that in Costa Rica and Colombia. We also did it in Vietnam in the past. So regional empowerment partners will actually be the ones that will make that happen. They'll provide obviously, the sponsorship and the financial resources that go, they will, and you'd be recognized in that context as essentially a partner for access. But whatever it is, I'm just highlighting some of these examples that you as an institution, and obviously it's an institution-wide discussion. All of that information is now published. It's public for you as universities. We announced yesterday at the opening, there are 2 co-hosts, and those are really kind of the big institutions that are, they'll be at all of the regional forums. They'll have branding across all of those regional forums. If you can't physically travel and attend all of those regional forums, but you want to be seen, you want to be heard, these are also ways that you can do that. Let me see where we are. Okay, so let me stop there, because I think I covered, I think, most of the content that I wanted to get through. And really, since I know most of you haven't attended a regional forum as universities, this was, and thank you for being here. I think thank you for caring, about what IC3 is doing and for schools. So I'd love to just open it up. And if there are questions that you have, I'm happy to take them. If you have some sentiments you want to share, please, do that now. But any questions that you have? Yes. And do we have the mic? Yeah. Thanks, Jaden. Yeah, please use the mic. Otherwise, our colleagues virtually won't hear. All of the sessions are also being recorded, and they'll be published on the YouTube channel after the conference.
All right. Hi, I'm Soumya, and I'm from Aston University. I've got a
Sorry, which university?
Aston University.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome.
All right. Thank you. A very, very quick question. So I honestly haven't attended the regional forums, and I am quite conscious about attending those. While we do speak about not just going into the better schools or the good schools and going into the other schools as well, more often than not, the feedback that I've had from counselors, from principals, from chairmen of those schools is that UK education and education abroad is quite expensive for our students. What is, when we are putting together the regional forums, we of course invite counselors from those schools as well. What is the learning and unlearning process that those counselors are going through with IC3 before those forums? Because as a university, like you earlier mentioned, there's a lot of travel involved, there are budgets involved, there's so much more involved, right? Going into a city just to hear that is not a pleasant experience, is it? So what is the process that these counselors go through? Are they vetting their students, or are they just going by their perception that education abroad is really expensive? Of course, like today as a counselor, if I go to a student and say, hey, can your parents afford 30 lakh per annum for your education abroad? Kids would probably say, oh no, I don't think my parents can do that. Are counselors actually going and speaking to parents about these things? So that's my question for you. What is IC3 doing with these counselors from not the best schools in the city to go through that process?
Well, just like here at the conference, there's a range, a pretty wide cross section of, when you say not the best schools, we may be, thinking about, okay, are we talking about academic preparation? Are we talking about financial ability? Are we probably, maybe a little bit of both and maybe the latter, but creating awareness is actually something that without your presence, how can that be done? So this is and I understand that it's a bit of a rat race for universities to say, okay, I need to show ROI immediately in some cases. But so that is there. But as you see, firstly, something like the IC3 Institute, where there are, as we said, not that flagship program where I said there were close to 400 counselors that graduated through that. Those counselors spent 350 plus hours going through this training program, in addition to their teaching responsibilities and counseling responsibilities to do this. And there are 4 pillars of that academic program: the what to study, the where to study, the how to make it happen. So destinations are covered, regions are covered. It's not region biased. We'll cover local, we'll cover global. And then the DNA of counseling, right? So the nuts and bolts, how to establish your counseling curriculum, your counseling calendar, all of those kinds of things. So, this is a balance and I would say a partnership. It's not IC3's mission to sensitize counselors to UK education or to US education, or that's something that actually we need you all as institutions. And I remember, I'm traveling, I was traveling for many years on behalf of not just one of the most expensive institutions in my region, but one of the most expensive institutions in the world. And you as an institution, of course, have to decide, is this, tier 2, tier 3 city? Am I ready to go there? And also we can make assumptions, I think, sometimes as institutions as to what, the capability is. So there is the awareness and the sensitizing that's being created through, that's what IC3 is about. Now, you don't need to have gone through the Institute's 350-hour training program to come to a regional forum. So in Mumbai, you're going to have the Dhirubhai Ambanis, you're going to have the Oberoi International Schools, you're going to have all of those institutions and schools. But you will also have schools that are coming, that maybe traveled, maybe they took a 6, 7, 8 hour car ride, from other parts of the region to be there. So you're going to have a mix of that. I really appreciate that question. But what I would also say is that I would put a lot of that responsibility on you all as institutions to say, we need to sensitize not just about our institution, but collectively. And you see a Scottish pavilion, you see an Australia pavilion, there's talk about a UK pavilion. Those kinds of things need to be happening very intentionally. We should be seeing a US pavilion. You see the state of California is there, and there are conversations in PA and Michigan and New York and other parts of the world that are doing that. So collectively, how can we as institutions help create that awareness? So, but ultimately, as you look at this and you say, okay, you can see, there's some indication that you have, and then obviously you also know what historically works for your institution. But the sensitizing, the awareness creation is absolutely happening. I can't guarantee that a school coming to every regional forum is, we don't view this as a recruitment program. Recruitment should be a byproduct of the work that's happening in IC3. So, yeah, great question. Are there other questions? Yes, we're here. Thanks, Jaden.
I have 2 questions. One is in regards to the kind of schools that we're picking. So counseling is definitely more needed in high schools where there are no counselors. In some high schools, because they have no exposure to counseling at all, students there. So are we considering those kind of high schools where there are no counselors, where probably a teacher might be doubling up as a counselor? That's the first question. And the second question is, I'm sure there would be some kind of pattern in the kinds of sessions that have happened in 2023. Some popular topics. Could you throw some light on the kind of topics that are spoken on?
Yeah, both great, both good questions. So the first one, it's most schools in the world. There's an elite group, a very small minority of schools that actually have counseling. So it's most schools where it's a teacher, maybe it's a team of teachers. But what you'll see typically at the host schools is that there is a semblance of counseling, typically an established counseling unit. And that's how, either they've come through the institute training programs, maybe they've been serving in various committees. We build a relationship in that way. At most of the host schools. Now, the host school is obviously one aspect of that. What they do is typically open up their campus. They become a beacon for counseling in the region. So we try to select schools and really partner with schools that have the mindset of counseling, so that they are actually seen as a beacon of counseling for others in the region. And it's usually within a 200-kilometer radius or so that the host school committee will do its outreach. And they are absolutely targeting, if it's here in India, state board schools that have no concept of counseling, right? So if you come to a regional forum, please expect that cross section and come, I would urge you, with the mindset of serving, not transacting or selling. And I know that's not most of us anyway. But those outcomes, and I experienced the outcomes. We saw the outcomes. The outcomes are there, but you should expect that you will also be doing some teaching. And doing that, there is a service element to this. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question to that. So I've attended some events, not the regional forums exactly, where the whole school opens up the event.
These are IC3?
No,
Okay.
The other general, I guess there were individual events done just by the school.
Okay.
And mostly it's for the fairs, like students from other schools are invited. But here, just so that there's clarity, we're saying the host school will open it up to the other high school management who is probably thinking of doing something in counseling. They might or they might not have things, and they would come and join the host school. So it's not just the students, but also the teacher who's probably doubling up as a counselor, or the principal that's interested.
Actually the focus.
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
The focus would be, so you'll see principals, you'll see headmasters, you'll see some, if there is a defined counselor, you'll see some teachers who are essentially serving that role as a counselor. That's the bulk of the regional forum. The morning of the regional forum itself, there will be some kind of student interaction, parent interaction, that it may be with just the host school if they have a large enough community, but otherwise, if they have the capacity, they may invite others, students to come from the region. But that may be, an hour and a half, 90 minutes. These are not, the focus of this is not fairs, but we want you to meet the students, right? And it's also one of the ways that I understand, you're messaging that to your dean or, whomever, and to say, okay, well, no, we're not going to send you for a professional development event. IC3 is it depends on how you look at it, right? For me, when I was in the university side, this fell into our recruitment budget because of the number of high schools that we were engaging with. Yes, it was professional development as well. So you have to also really intentionally, as you plan this, how you're preparing your budgets, you're making your proposals, that you understand that it's a little bit of both, but it should be part of your recruitment and outreach strategy. The day before the forums, remember, there'll be school visits. You'll visit 2, 3, 4 schools, in that region, in that area before, where you'll interact with students and parents as well. But the regional forum itself, and in terms of the sessions, you'd ask that. So there are sessions that can be combined for both universities and schools, but there would also be some that are specific for high schools, and then some content that's specific for university. So probably it's something in the effect of what are the trends in a particular region around recruitment. Maybe there's a student panel that the whole school puts together for you to help understand the mindset of the students. That content will be very different in 2024 than it probably was in 2023. Specifically, that broad sub-theme, shaping the future through counseling, there typically are 5 or 6 specific sub-themes that are there. Just like there are at the conference, and you can see those on the website, the sub-themes, and that might be, technology, it might be trends, it may be ethics, right? So as you're preparing your proposals, again, I can't stress enough how important it is for you to submit proposals, right? So that you can be there and have a role. It's always great as a university to, this shouldn't be why you submit a proposal, but you also want to be seen, right? Not every university will come and be able to present, but if you have that opportunity, it's going to really enrich the experience for you. So submit the proposals and try that. Is there? Yes. Oh, you have it. Okay. Oh yeah. And I think we'll take 1 or 2, maybe more if we have. Yeah. And Mamta, and then we'll have to close.
Again, I'm Jennifer Russell from Bryn Mawr College in the US, in Philadelphia. Thank you for your question before. It's a really hard one. Thank you for asking it, but also a really important one because, we don't want students to get so excited about an opportunity that maybe just isn't possible. So my question related to that was, is there any resource maybe that IC3 has? So if we're interested in attending any of these forums, to get a sense of if the schools sort of in this region have students that are thinking about going abroad, in this case to the US maybe, for university, is there any resource that has like I'm going to say a school profile? They probably don't have that, but any sort of resource for us to get a sense of if students are thinking about going abroad, if they have a pattern of that.
Yeah.
So we can get a sense of, just what their students are doing.
The IC3 Institute Student Quest report would be great for you. It was unveiled yesterday. You'll have access to that. You can also look at the past reports that are there from 2023, but the 2024, it actually surveys students and counselors and parents. So you can see that. Now,
okay.
Can you tie that data specific to one school? No. But you, with your own understanding and knowledge, and also using this network, you can see, okay, graded the American School of Sao Paulo. I think most of you probably know that school. You understand the kind of mindset that they're inculcating. So I would, at all of the regional forums, there will be schools and counselors that are having the desire to send their students abroad, or at least learn about those opportunities at all of the regional forums. That may not be 100% of the attendees,
right?
But yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if that helps, but
that might. How do we get that? So
the report is well, firstly, I think you're all going to receive a copy of it in your email, but it's on the Institute website. Anupama, is it on the website now? Do you know the Student Quest survey? Okay. Yeah. So you can get the report now. And you can see that. And you can also compare to previous years and all that. So Mamta will take, I think, one last question we have time for, and then I'm happy to chat.
Is not a question. It's more of a comment in terms of school engagement. So when we think about engaging with schools, I think it's very important to keep in mind that it takes time to build those like connections or to create that awareness among the school sector. So when I look at the school engagement strategy for my university, so I'm Mamta from Australian Catholic University, and I keep it in mind, and I keep my management also informed that it's not a piece where you can expect immediate gains or immediate results. It needs we need some time to invest into it, and then only we'll be able to see the outcome. Now, just to like Jim has already answered, but yeah, if we don't go to those schools, then awareness is never going to be there that, okay, yes, these are also options. So for example, like in terms of Australian education, so we can see that when we now have a study pavilion. We have seen Australian institutions participating in the IC3 conference. So we now see that intentionally the school counselors come to us and say that, hey, we do have inquiries from our school. We do have interest for studying in Australia from our school. So it takes time to build that school engagement piece. And I think IC3 regional forums are a great way to do that, because it just not allows you to just have that fair part of it, but the engagement with the counselors or the school management or the teachers is equally important.
Thanks, Mamta. Yeah, that's helpful. And I think this goes back to the intentional, proactive piece. And I think, seeing the Australia Pavilion, for example, it's a collective mindset of, okay, not just one institution, but what can we do to create awareness about our region, our country as a destination for students. And, I would say, and going back, and I think, as we think about this, it's, if you can, every institution is also looking at emerging markets too, right? So what are those emerging markets that you have and that you can, and that inherently is exploratory. So you can also utilize this opportunity as, if you're going to, and that you have to hit certain cities, you have to go to certain schools, you'll do those. But what is if you're doing 10, what are the one, can you spend 3 extra hours? Can you spend 1 extra day, to explore and serve? They go hand in hand. So that's also a mindset piece. And I understand there's a lot of logistics that go into that, but that's also my plea to universities, is that, you're thinking and hopefully shifting that mindset. So we're pretty much coming to the end of our time, but what I also want to share was, my cards are here. I'd love to figure out a way where, I can, if I haven't already sat down with you individually and had a meeting, I would love to do that. I'm also here tomorrow through the entire day. I've kept my schedule open, just to connect with people. So if you are here, I'm sure, some of you may be visiting schools and doing those things, but if you have some time, let's sit down and, have a cup of coffee, and let's talk about what you're, looking at and how our team can support you. If you can leave your business cards here, that'd be really helpful. If you don't have a business card or you ran out, my QR code there is for WhatsApp. So just send me a message there and we can get something scheduled. But thanks for being here. Thanks for caring. I know that recruitment is a really important function. We need to recruit to be able to, sustain our institutions. We're all at different levels of selectivity, and, all of those pieces are there. So for you to be here means a lot. We'd love for you to really think differently and serve while you're achieving those outcomes that you need. And you can do that through a pretty proactive approach in the regional forum. So thank you so much for being here. Oh, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention. And this is just a note, nothing to do with the regional forums, but you see the IC3 Expo. I don't know, is anyone exhibiting? Of course, Mamta's here, but are others actually exhibiting? You have a table or a pavilion? Okay. Some are surprised. They didn't realize that there was a component like that at IC3, the Expo. So a lot of universities are thinking, okay, what, we should have a table or we should have a pavilion next year. The partnerships team is there at the IC3 pavilion. You can talk with them. They are actually in these 2 days for institutions that are reserving space for 2024. There is a little bit of a budget break that you can look at. So I think having that Expo, and it will continue to grow. You may have noticed if you've been at previous conferences, it used to be an annual IC3 conference. Now it's annual IC3 conference and Expo, and that Expo component will just continue to grow. All right, so we'd invite you to explore that too, and come and join the Expo next year. Okay, thanks so much.